Hi everybody. In this video I am going to talk about the effective communication skill of modern days. Have you ever felt the messages you convey are not communicated properly, or have you ever felt guilty for not conveying the message as it wants to be conveyed? If so, it is because of your weakness towards communication skills. Apart from the basic necessities, you need to be equipped with habits for good communication skills, as this is what will make you a happy and successful social being. In order to develop these habits, you need to first acknowledge the fact that communication skills need an improvement from time to time. The only constant in life is change, and the more you accept your strengths and work towards dealing with shortcomings, especially in the area of communication skills, the better will be your interactions and the more your social popularity. Thus, the present situation stresses to improve our communication skill in a better way. We use communication usually to mean speaking or writing or sending message to another person. Communication is really much more than that. It involves a number of choices and decisions, but being natural and unnoticed in informal situations. In informal situations, our communication needs to be more effective and carefully chosen. That is, we need to plan our communication. Here comes the question: what is communication and how communication could be defined? Communication may be broadly defined as the process of meaningful interaction among human beings. More specifically, it is the process by which meanings are perceived and understandings are reached among human beings. It was told by D.E. McFarland. Looked at more closely, what is essential for communication to occur is the cooperation between two parties, one active or at the giving end and the other passive or at the receiving end. The sender selects appropriate symbols to suit the situation and realizes the meaning through speech or writing, depending upon the socially regulated requirements or self-perceived needs. At the receiving end, the symbols are identified, and identification obviously implies recognition and realization of meaning through the interpretative process. So, the process of communication may be summarized as follows. Communication is it's a network of interactions, and naturally the sender and the receiver keep on changing their roles. And another aspect of communication is deployment of a code consisting of arbitrarily evolved symbols and the determination of the appropriateness of their use in given situations, leading to the emergence of diverse communication patterns. A number of factors come into play in shaping these patterns. In fact, communication is often but not always momentary. At times, communication is a cumulative process that starts before the actual communicative event takes place and continues after it has occurred. Thus, communication therefore must acquire a true perspective of not only the present requirements of the situation, but also its relationship with the past and its impact on the future. So, communication is a process where one sets out to convey a message to another person through the medium of words, gestures, and or pictures. The process of conveying the message is fulfilled only when the person is receiving it has understood the message entirely. And the cycle it would be observed that the entire event takes place within a common frame of reference, also called as communication environment. And let us see the introduction to communication skill. So communications come from the Latin word communis, which means common. When we communicate, we try to establish commonness with others. Communication is a method of sharing our feelings, thoughts, and ideas and forming relationships with fellow beings. We all need to communicate wherever we are and whatever we do. The inability to communicate appropriately and successfully leads to failure in our personal and professional lives. Art of communication avoids a lot of miscommunication, waste of time, energy, and money. Effective learning and teaching, better parent-child understanding, and better interpersonal relations are some of the benefits of effective oral communication. Let us see the introduction to oral communication skill. Oral communication is a powerful tool that enables us to function efficiently in everyday life and in the world of work. Speech helps us to interact with others, and the ability to speak well increases your chances of getting a good job. Individuals are brought into contact with one another when they form groups, societies, associations, or organizations because they have commonly shared interests, purposes, duties, problems, functions, and responsibilities. So, oral skill comprises both listening and speaking, the very foundation of literacy. To speak English well, we should be able to pronounce the consonant and vowel sounds correctly and use stress, intonation, and rhythm appropriately. Listening and hearing is the main skills for the good communication, effective communication. So, good listener will become a successful communicator of the society. Though we spend a lot of time listening, we take listening for granted. To practice listening efficiently, we need to understand the three important stages of listening. Listening is a fundamental language skill, but it is often ignored by foreign and second language teachers. How to do the listening process in an effective manner? By hearing. So hearing means listening enough to catch what the speaker is saying. Hearing and listening are often used as interchangeably. But there is an important difference between them. According to Stephen Lucas, listening doesn't mean we don't hear. And they come to explain the process of hearing to be a psychological one, arguing that it involves the vibration of sound wave on our eardrums and the firing of electrochemical impulses from the inner ear to the central auditory system of the brain. But listening involves paying close attention to and making sense of what we hear. So listening is not a synonym of the hearing. According to Hamilton, hearing is with the ears, listening is with the mind. First step of the communication starts from hearing. It is referred to the response caused by sound waves stimulating the sensory receptors of the ear. It is physical response. Hearing is perception of sound waves. We must hear to listen, but we need not listen to hear. Perception necessary for listening depends on attention. Brain screens stimuli and permits only a select few to come into focus. So this selective insight is known as attention. An important requirement for effective listening is understanding. So understanding is very, very important. So the next part of listening involves hearing and understanding. What we have heard, this step helps us to understand symbols we have seen and heard. We must analyze the meaning of the motivation we have perceived. The meanings attached to these symbols are a function of our past associations and of the context in which the symbols occur. For successful interpersonal communication, the listener must understand the intended meaning and the context assumed by the sender. So the remembrance is also an important one in this listening. So remembering is an important listening process because it means that an individual has not only received and interpreted a message but has also added it to the mind's storage bank. In listening, our attention is selective. So, too is our memory. What is remembered may be quite different from what was originally seen or heard. When we judging or evaluating, we are sure that we have understood what the speaker has said. Think whether it makes sense. We should be able to form our own opinion regarding what has been said and measure the value of it to ourselves and to others. I will give you some three basic mode of listening. Active and reflective listening. It is most important skill. In active listening, the listener is genuinely interested in understanding what the other person is thinking, feeling, wanting, or what the messages means. So the listeners restate or paraphrase our understanding of the message and reflect it back to the sender for verification. This verification or feedback process is what distinguishes active listening and makes it effective. Some essential points for active listening, they are intensity, empathy, acceptance, recognize responsibility for completeness. And the listener is genuinely interested in hearing and understanding the other person's point of view. He will be attentive and will passively listen. The listener assumes that what he heard and understand is correct, but stay passive and do not verify it. So, in the competitive and combative listening, it happens when the listener is more interested in promoting his own point of view than in understanding or exploring someone else's view. He either listens for opening to take the floor or for flaws or weak points. And I would like to give some 5 styles of listening. Like any skill, we all develop strategies for listening that mesh with our personality and worldview. These coping mechanisms often are successful enough for us to get by, but inadequate enough so that we suffer from our lack of true skill. People employ listening styles to navigate conversations, but quite often these styles are counterproductive and frustrating for others' conversation. The 5 styles of listener are the fraud. First one is the fraud. The most common type of listener, unfortunately, is the fraud listener, who simply pretends to listen. Some frauds use head nods and eye contact to entice the speaker into believing they are listening. Often the fraud listener will even memorize a fact or two and repeat such things. So, this is it. So, often the fraud listener will even memorize a fact or two and repeat them back to you to convince you that they are indeed listening intently. Of course, they may not know what you are saying as you are speaking, and most of the time they will forgotten almost all of what you said or meant within minutes of the conversation's end. Yes, the next one is the interpreter. They are listening, and you can tell that because they are constantly interrupting to get across a point they feel is essential to the conversation. So the next one is the charmer, then self-absorbed one, and rational one. So these are all the 5 styles of that for the listeners. And I will give you some points for the effective listening, tips for effective listening. First one is assimilate and process information. Second one is be attentive. Third one is maintain eye contact. Fourth one is stay focused. And fifth one is focus on content. And listen completely. So, avoid emotional involvement, avoid distractions, listen for main ideas, ask questions, and ask yourself mental questions. So, use the gap between the rate of speech and the rate of thought. Then only you can get you want to give the feedback. The feedback is very, very important. Sit up and straight, look directly at the speaker now and then, and not to show that you understand. At appropriate points, you may also smile, laugh, be silent. These are all ways to let the speaker know that you are really listening, and adjust to the accent. And hearing is very, very important. Hearing Hearing only give the success in listening, and capability of hearing is very, very important. And I would like to give some of the barriers to effective listening. Is the barriers of the effective listenings are we receive no formal training in listening. That is one of the barrier. And speaking as a skill is seen as more important than listening. That is the second barrier for listening. Third one is filters keep us from listening without bias. That is the third one. And fourth one is effective listening takes a lot of mental effort. So these are all the barriers for the effective listening, for the effective communication skill. So the holy grail of not listening is thinking about how you will respond in a conversation instead of listening to other person. The setting for listening is the default one for most people, and we see it happen every day without giving it a second thought. Therefore, it is relatively easy to see how the world is full of misunderstanding. People doesn't listen. So by using all those points, we can get a effective communication skill. With that effective communication skill only, we can survive in this modern world. Thank you. Thank you, one and all.